Rain hammered the glass, turning the streetlights outside Rainier Point Medical Center into smeared halos. Inside the emergency department, everything was bright and too clean air sharp with antiseptic and warmed plastic. The night shift sat in that thin hush when alarms stayed quiet long enough for people to believe they could breathe. Tessa Quinn stood at the nurse's station with coffee she had not tasted. She updated the board, checked times, tracked the small math that kept strangers alive. On the far wall, a monitor beeped slow and steady. Somewhere down the hall, a gurney wheel squeaked, then stopped. The front doors slid open. Wet air spilled in. A man stumbled through it like he had been pushed. His jacket was too thin, his hair pasted to his scalp, rainwater dripping off his chin in heavy drops. He tried to speak, or maybe he tried to inhale. His knees buckled. He hit the floor hard, the sound snapping the room awake. "Triage," someone called. Tessa was moving before her coffee finished tipping. The man's eyes were open but vacant. His chest did not rise. Tessa dropped to her knees, lifted his chin, then found his neck. Nothing. A monitor was rushed over and drew a flat line that felt like a door closing. "Start compressions," Tessa said. Her voice did not climb, it simply landed. A tech dragged the crash cart closer. Shoes scuffed on linoleum. The room tightened into a circle of purpose. Tessa planted the heel of her hand on the center of the man's chest and began. Down, up, down, up. The cadence was clean like a metronome you could trust. Ribs complained under pressure. She kept her shoulders stacked, letting her weight do the work. "Bag him," she said. A respiratory therapist sealed the bag valve mask. Oxygen hissed. The therapist squeezed. The chest rose, then fell. Tessa counted under her breath, not for show, for timing. 2 minutes, she saw. Switch on my count. A nurse tore open swabs and gloves, hands moving fast and a little shaky. Tessa glanced once and leaned closer. "Slow is smooth," she said. "Do it right." The nurse swallowed and studied. Tessa tracked what mattered. The clock, the airway seal, the line on the screen. When a vein offered itself at the crook of the arm, she slid the catheter in on the first pass. Dark blood flashed. Tape went down flat. "Epinephrine," she said. 1 milligram IV. The dose went in. The attending watched the strip. "No shock," he said. "Non-shockable," Tessa answered and kept pressing. They worked in turns to keep compressions strong. Count, squeeze, breathe, reassess. A nurse called out times. A tech held the airway tray open. No one wasted words. Rain kept tapping the windows as if trying to match their tempo. Someone found a wallet so soaked the paper stuck. The name was Ray Dobbins, 56, no address. A bus pass folded soft, a receipt for soup. The details did not change the work. "Second round," the nurse said. Tessa leaned close to the monitor as if attention could pull electricity into order. The screen flickered a weak, complex stuttering into view, then slipping away. A second later, it returned slower and thicker. "Pulse check," the attending said. Tessa's fingers found the carotid again. For a moment there was nothing, and then a tired roll pressed against her touch, like a wave that did not want to break but did anyway. "I've got it," she said. "Pulse is back." The air shifted, shoulders dropped, someone exhaled hard. The respiratory therapist kept the bag moving until Ray's chest tried to help, small effort, uneven but his. "Move him to Bay 3, the charge nurse said. A stretcher rolled in. Sheets snapped tight. A warm blanket came from the warmer, faint steam rising. Tessa took it and spread it over Ray's shoulders, tucking the corners like she was making a bed. Ray's eyelids fluttered. His mouth moved a word that never formed. "You're here," Tessa said, close enough that only he could hear. "Stay." They wheeled him down the hall, past the triage desk, past the glass doors, streaked with rain. The wheels hummed over seams in the floor, steady matching the beeping that followed. When the bay curtain closed, the department rushed back into sound phones, ringing a monitor, chiming in another room, water dripping off boots near the entrance. Tessa peeled off her gloves and washed her hands until the water ran hot. Above the sink, stainless steel reflected her face in warped pieces. Her sleeve rode up as she scrubbed, and the thin, pale scar along the inside of her left wrist caught the light. She tugged the cuff down without thinking. The ceiling camera blinked its little red dot over the doorway. Tessa looked at it the way other people checked mirrors, quick and automatic, then returned to her hands. The scent of iodine clung under her nails. Behind her, someone murmured, "Nice save." She answered with a small nod without a smile, listening for the next monitor to change its song. She dried them on a paper towel, folded it once, and set it down neatly. Then she picked up her untouched coffee and took a sip. Cold and bitter. She swallowed anyway, eyes already on the board, the clock, the rhythm that never stopped. The coffee sat heavy in Tessa Quinn's stomach, more habit than comfort, and she set the cup down beside the triage clipboard. The board glowed with names and room numbers, boxes that filled and emptied all night, like lungs. Bay 3 now carried Ray Dobbins, warmed, breathing alive, and monitored. That was enough. A stretcher rattled over a seam in the floor. Tessa looked up, tracking the sound. She knew every doorway that stuck, every corner that stole inches from a gurney, every place a family member might step into an IV pole without seeing it. She moved with her shoulders angled, slipping between carts and people, without touching either, as if space itself could be a shield. Kim Park, the charge nurse, leaned over the counter and watched Tessa update times. Kim's voice stayed low, even when the department did not. "You okay?" Kim asked. Tessa capped her pen. "I'm fine." Kim's eyes flicked to Bay 3. He looked gone. He wasn't, Tessa said, and slid the chart into the rack. Across the desk, Sierra Lane fought a stack of labels, fingers sticky from sanitizer and nerves. Tessa reached over, separated the labels with a quick pinch, and set them in order. "Thank you," Sierra said. "Keep them dry," Tessa replied. "They curl when they're wet." Sierra gave a small laugh that sounded like relief. "How do you stay so calm?" A monitor chimed down the hall, a low battery alert. Tessa walked to it without hurrying, swapped the battery, listened for the return of the steady beep, then came back. "Practice," she said. She had chosen nights for that reason. Darkness softened faces. It lowered voices. Fewer administrators wandered the halls. Fewer questions floated toward her like hooks. The work stayed the same, but the air felt less crowded. She could do what needed doing and let the results speak quietly for her. The night shift ran on routines, and Tessa loved routines because they did not ask questions. She checked crash cart seals, counted syringes, replaced a half-empty bag of saline, and wiped the airway cart until the plastic shone under fluorescent light. The smell of bleach rode over everything. It got into her hair, into her clothes, and it made the outside world feel farther away. As she reached for a fresh roll of tape, her sleeve rode up and the thin, pale scar along her wrist caught the light. She tugged the cuff down without looking and pressed the fabric flat, then turned her wrist inward until the mark disappeared from view. The cuff stayed put, and she kept moving, eyes steady. A paramedic pushed an empty gurney through the ambulance entrance, water dripping from its frame. "Any warm blankets left?" he called. Tessa opened the warmer, felt the heat roll over her hands, and handed him 2 thick folds, tight and clean. "You always fold like that," he said, curious. "Hospital," Tessa replied, and turned back to the board. She charted with steady clicks, notes plain and careful, the kind that left no empty spaces for imagination. She documented Ray's meds timing response and the way his breathing smoothed when the blanket settled. Behind her, laughter flared at the station, then vanished as a call bell rang. Dr. Miles Redding passed with his badge, swinging hair too neat for a night in the emergency department. He paused at the counter and glanced at Tessa's screen. "Nice CPR," he said, casual, like he was commenting on a weather report. Tessa did not look up. "He's stable." Miles lingered a second longer than necessary. "You ever think about moving to days, better hours?" "I like nights," she said. He shrugged, already losing interest. "Suit yourself." When he left, Sierra leaned in. "He always talks like that," she whispered. Tessa stood and gathered supplies for a bed turnover. "Let him," she said. Bay 2 held a man perched on the edge of the mattress, arms crossed tight, jaw locked. The chart read intoxication and aggressive behavior. His eyes snapped to her hands as she set a cup of water on the tray. "You gonna stick me?" he snapped. Tessa met his gaze, then looked at the tremor in his fingers. "Not if you don't need it," she said. "Drink some water. We'll talk." He scoffed, but he took the cup. The sound of swallowing filled the room. Tessa clipped the pulse oximeter on his finger, gentle. He flinched like he expected pain. "It's just a clip," she said. He stared at her, anger thinning into confusion. "Why you being nice?" "Because you're here," Tessa said. She finished the assessment, then stepped back, leaving him space. At the door, she paused and scanned the hallway, quick and automatic, covering corners, exits, and the small, red blink of the nearest camera. Then she walked back to the station, as if she had only been looking for a chart. Chief Darius Cole stood near the entrance, hands clasped behind his back. Stillness sat on him like uniform. He nodded at Tessa as she passed. "You hear the weather's getting worse?" he asked. Tessa glanced at the glass doors, at rain sliding down in sheets. "It's already bad." Cole gave a short chuckle. "Fair." The department kept rolling. Phones rang, monitors beeped, people came in wet, angry, scared, exhausted. Tessa moved between bays with warm blankets, water cups, and simple sentences that slowed breathing. When she spoke, rooms settled by a degree. She never raised her voice. She never needed to. Near 2 a.m, the ambulance radio crackled with a new call. The voice was strained urgency, riding the static. Rainier Point inbound with a 51-year-old female. Severe abdominal pain, pale diaphoretic. Heart rate 140. Pressure is soft and dropping. Rigid abdomen. ETA 4 minutes. Kim straightened at the station. Sierra's eyes widened. Miles turned from the chart rack, suddenly focused. Tessa set her coffee aside and reached for a fresh pair of gloves. The ambulance radio clicked off, and the department shifted as if a single hand had tightened a dial. Kim Park called for Bay 1. Sierra Lane cleared the counter and pulled open a trauma drawer with both hands. Dr. Miles Redding rolled his shoulders once, then stepped toward the bay with the brisk walk he used when other people were watching. Tessa Quinn washed her hands, dried them, and slid on gloves. The vinyl snapped at her wrists. She checked the suction canister, the oxygen flow, the airway, cart latches. The room smelled like bleach and warm plastic. Behind the doors, rain kept working the windows. The paramedics came in fast boots, leaving wet prints on the floor. The woman on the stretcher was small-framed face gray hair stuck to her temples. She pressed both hands against her abdomen, as if she could hold something inside with willpower alone. Her eyes were open, but unfocused pupils wide in the bright light. Deanna Cruz, a paramedic, said. 51. Sudden onset belly pain at home. Went pale, started sweating, heart rate in the 140s, pressure dropping. We gave fluids minimal response. Deanna's lips were dry. When she tried to speak, only a thin breath came out. The monitor caught her rhythm and put it on display, a fast line that refused to settle. Tessa clipped on the pulse, oximeter checked cap refill, then slid her fingers to the wrist for a manual pulse. It thudded hard and quick, then slipped for a beat as if the body could not decide whether to fight or fold. Deanna, Tessa said close to her ear, "Look at me." Deanna's eyes found her for half a second. Fear lived there, clean and sharp. "It hurts," Deanna whispered. "I know," Tessa answered. "We are here." Miles stepped in at the head of the bed. "We are going to take care of you. Any medical history, blood thinners, surgery." Deanna tried to shake her head. It barely moved. Tessa lifted the blanket, exposed the abdomen, and kept her face neutral. The belly was rigid, not just tender. The skin looked stretched, shiny under the lights. When Tessa pressed gently with 2 fingers, Deanna flinched, and her whole torso locked a guarding that was not choice. Kim called out vitals. Heart rate 142, pressure 82/40, sat 94, she is cold. "Get 2 large bore lines," Miles said. "Type and screen, lactate, CBC, CMP, give a liter wide open." Sierra moved in with an IV kit and an uncertain breath. Tessa put a hand on her forearm, light pressure. "Feel for the bounce," Tessa said. "It is there." Sierra nodded, swallowed, and found a vein. Tessa started the second line on the other arm, the catheter sliding in clean. Blood flashed dark. She secured it, taped it flat, then hung warm fluids and watched the drip chamber fill. Deanna's skin stayed cold, her forehead beaded sweat that looked wrong against the chill. Tessa pressed her fingertips to Deanna's forearm and felt the fine tremor of the body trying to keep heat. "We need warming," Tessa said. Kim waved a tech over. A forced air warmer came in hose, snaking across the floor. Tessa tucked it around Deanna's legs. The plastic crinkled. The air it blew smelled faintly like dust. Miles leaned over the monitor. Could be sepsis, could be ruptured ulcer, could be aneurysm. Get portable ultrasound. A tech rolled the machine in wheels, squeaking. The gel bottle was cold in Tessa's hand. She warmed it between her palms for a second, then handed it to the resident who was setting up. Deanna moaned as the probe touched her abdomen. Tessa kept her voice low. "Short breaths," she said. "In through the nose, out slow." Deanna tried. Her breath hitched, then found a smaller pattern. Labs began to populate on the screen at the station. Sierra called them out, from the printout voice rising. "Lactate is high, hemoglobin is dropping, white count normal." Miles frowned, then looked back at Deanna. The fluids were running fast, but the blood pressure did not climb. It flickered up for a moment, then sagged again, like a hand losing grip. Tessa watched the waveform on the monitor. The pulse pressure was tight, squeezed down to a narrow gap. The heart was racing, but it was not winning. She looked at the abdomen again at the way it sat high and hard. "This is not just volume," she said. Miles glanced at her. "What are you thinking?" Tessa did not raise her voice. She pointed with 2 fingers, precise. "Pressure. Something in there is compressing flow. It feels like compartment pressure, or a hematoma that is choking mesenteric circulation. She is not responding like simple dehydration or infection." The resident paused, the probe eyes flicking to the screen. The image shimmered with motion, then steadied. A dark stripe collected where it should not be. "Free fluid," the resident said. Miles straightened. The room tightened again. "Call surgery," he said. "Trauma," Tessa corrected. "Now." Kim was already on the phone. Her tone stayed level, even as her fingers moved fast. "We need trauma in Bay 1. Possible intra-abdominal bleed. Fast, positive, hypotensive." Deanna's eyes rolled toward Tessa again as if she could sense the shift in gravity. Her lips trembled. "Am I dying?" she asked. Tessa leaned closer. She did not promise. She did not lie. She gave the only thing that mattered in that second. "We are not letting you do this alone," she said. The trauma surgeon arrived with reins still on her coat. "Dr. Elaine Hart, hair tucked under a cap, eyes that read the room in a blink. She did not ask for a summary with flourish. She looked at the monitor, the belly, the ultrasound. "Show me," Hart said. The resident held the probe steady. Hart watched the screen for 2 seconds, then placed her own hand on Deanna's abdomen, firm but controlled. Deanna cried out, then clenched her jaw and shook. "Peritoneal signs," Hart said. "This is blood until proven otherwise. We need the operating room." Miles started to speak. Hart cut him off with a look not rude, just efficient. "Call it," she said. Kim already had. A tech pushed the doors open, and the hallway beyond looked suddenly too long. The stretcher rolled, wheels clacking. Tessa walked with them, hands on the side rail to keep Deanna steady over the seams in the floor. As they moved, Deanna's fingers caught Tessa's sleeve. Her grip was weak but desperate. "Please," Deanna whispered. Tessa covered Deanna's hand with her gloved one. The glove was smooth and cool. "I am here," Tessa said. "Stay with me." In the operating room corridor, the air changed. Cooler, sterile, louder with distant suction and the soft rush of filtered vents. The surgical team met them at the doors. Hart spoke in short commands, each one landing like a step on a staircase. "Massive transfusion protocol ready. Prep and drape. We go fast and we go clean." Tessa gave the handoff in plain language. "Vitals. Response to fluids. Fast positive. Timing. No extra adjectives. Just facts that could save minutes." Hart nodded once. "Good catch." Tessa did not answer. She stepped back as the doors swung closed and the world of bright lights and sharp metal swallowed Deanna whole. Back in the emergency department, the noise returned with a slightly different edge. A child cried in Bay 4. Someone argued about pain medication at the desk. The smell of wet coats mixed with alcohol swabs and cafeteria fries that had gone cold hours ago. Tessa went straight to the supply room. She restocked the airway cart, replaced the gel packets, checked the suction tubing. Her hands moved on their own while her mind replayed the belly, the waveform, the way Deanna had looked at her. Sierra appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. "Do you think she is going to make it?" Tessa slid a drawer shut. The latch clicked. "They got her to the right place," she said. "That was you," Sierra said, more firm now. "You saw it first." Tessa turned with a pack of gauze in her hand. "We all saw it," she replied. "We just saw it at different times." An hour later, a message came down that the bleed had been controlled, pressure relieved, and Deanna had stabilized enough for critical care. The words were simple, but the way Kim's shoulders loosened told the real story. People in the department kept working, but the air felt less trapped. Miles walked past Tessa near the nurse station stethoscope, bouncing lightly against his chest. He spoke without stopping, voice pitched to Carrie. "Good timing on that trauma call," he said. "Lucky we caught it." Tessa looked at the tray in her hands at the latches lined up and clean. She felt a quick sting sharp as alcohol on a raw scrape. It lasted one breath. She closed the last latch, pressed it flat, and set the tray where it belonged. "Not luck," she said, but quietly more to herself than to him. Miles did not hear, or chose not to. He was already telling someone else about the case, shaping it into something that fit his mouth. His laughter rose for a moment, then blurred into the steady sounds of the unit. Tessa turned away and pulled a warm blanket from the warmer. Heat rolled over her fingers. She folded it tight, edges aligned, and carried it down the hall to the next bay where a patient shivered under thin sheets. She laid it over the person's shoulders with the same care she had given Ray, smoothing it once, then twice, until the fabric lay still. The monitor nearby beeped at a calm pace. Outside rain kept writing on the windows in clear, patient lines. Inside, Tessa moved back toward the station hands already reaching for the next set of gloves. Tessa returned the blanket warmer's door to its latch and listened for it to seal. The small click felt like a finished sentence. In the hall, the unit's sounds carried on the steady beep of monitors, the faint whir of the forced air, warmer still running in Bay 1's empty space, the low murmur of families speaking into their phones like prayer. She took a breath and let it out slowly through her nose. Her gloves were gone, her hands were clean. The smell of soap clung to her skin. Kim Park stood at the station with a clipboard tucked against her ribs, eyes scanning the board. Her hair was pinned up tight, but damp curls had escaped around her ears from the humidity drifting in every time the doors opened. "I see you took Deanna," Kim said. Tessa nodded once. "Good." Kim's gaze stayed on her a beat longer. "You did what you always do. You saw it." Tessa did not answer with pride. She looked at the board, then at the hallway. A patient call light blinked in Bay 4, bright and impatient. "I'm going to check on 4, she said. The patient in Bay 4 was a teenage girl with mascara streaked down her cheeks, knees drawn up under thin sheets. Her mother stood beside the bed, twisting a tissue until it tore. The girl's hands shook as she tried to hold a plastic emesis bag steady. Tessa stepped in softly. The room smelled like vomit and cheap perfume. The monitor showed a fast heart rate, but good oxygen. Anxiety, not failure. "Hey," Tessa said, voice low. "I'm Tessa. Can I sit for a second?" The girl's eyes flicked to Tessa's hands, then to the doorway, then back. She nodded, small and quick. Tessa pulled a stool close, but not too close. She did not crowd the air. "Tell me where you feel it," she said. The girl touched her sternum. "Here, like I can't get air." "You are getting air," Tessa replied. She lifted 2 fingers. "Watch this with me." She timed the girl's breaths with her own quiet and steady. Inhale, exhale. The girl tried to match it, her shoulders dropping a fraction with each cycle. The mother stopped twisting the tissue and pressed her palm to the bed rail as if she needed something solid to hold on to. When the girl's breathing slowed, Tessa reached for a warm blanket and draped it over her knees. The girl's hands stilled around the bag. The mother's eyes shone. "Thank you," the mother whispered. Tessa nodded a simple motion. "Press the call button if it changes." Back at the station, Sierra Lane was reprinting labels that had curled at the edges. She caught Tessa's eye and gave a grateful look that did not need words. Miles Redding stood at the chart rack, talking to a resident, his tone confident, his hands moving, as if he could shape the air into agreement. He glanced at Tessa once, then looked away, already busy with his own story. Tessa focused on the work. She checked Bay 3, where Ray Dobbins lay under his warm blanket, chest rising with uneven but present breaths. His skin had color now, a thin pink returning to cheeks that had been gray. His eyes opened when she adjusted his nasal cannula. "You still here?" he rasped. Tessa leaned in. Yes. His gaze drifted to her badge. "Thank you," he said, slow. She tightened the blanket once more at his shoulder. "Rest," she replied. In the hallway, water dripped from boots and pant legs. A paramedic carried a bag of supplies back out into the rain, head down against the wind. The doors slid shut again, and the department's temperature steadied. Then the ceiling light above the nurse's station trembled. It was subtle at first, like the building had caught a shiver. The fluorescent tube flickered, found itself, then held. A few heads turned. Nobody spoke. Tessa looked up. The camera in the corner blinked its red dot. The dot stayed steady. She watched the light fixture's metal frame, the way it vibrated in a rhythm that was not the same as thunder. The vibration stopped. The unit breathed again. Chief Darius Cole appeared at the entrance, rainwater shining on his jacket shoulders. He carried a phone in one hand and his keys in the other. His face was calm, but his eyes were awake in a way that did not match routine. He stepped to the side of the doors, where the noise from the waiting room could not reach as strongly. He answered his phone with a quiet word, then turned his body slightly away, a habit from old work. Tessa kept charting, but she listened anyway. Not to pry, to measure the temperature of the room. Cole's voice stayed level. "Yes, understood. We can keep the roof clear. We can keep the ambulance entrance open. You will coordinate with the local units, not through my staff. Copy." He ended the call and stood still for a moment, staring at nothing. He slipped the phone into his pocket. Then he noticed Tessa watching him and offered a small nod. "Everything okay?" she asked. Cole's mouth twitched. It might have been a smile if it had lasted longer. Depends on your definition of okay. Kim came around the counter and joined them. Darius. Cole looked at her, then at the ceiling, as if he could see through it. "Facilities needs to lock the roof stairwell door for a bit. Roof access stays controlled. No one goes up without me." Kim did not ask why. She only asked the question that mattered. "Does it affect patient flow?" "No," Cole said. "We keep this place moving. We keep lanes clean." Tessa saw Kim's eyes narrow by a fraction. Kim was not afraid, but she did not like surprises. "Are we expecting a medevac?" Kim asked. Cole's gaze moved back to the glass. Rain ran down in long lines, turning headlights into bright smears. "Not the kind you see on the news," he replied. Kim exhaled slow. "All right, I will keep my people on the floor." Cole nodded. "Thank you." He stepped away toward the back corridor where the service elevator sat behind a keycard door. His footsteps were quiet. His posture stayed straight. Tessa watched him go, then returned to the board. She did not ask Kim for details. Kim did not offer them. The unit had its own language. Questions were sometimes a luxury. A moment later, the overhead speaker clicked on with a faint pop. "Attention staff," a calm voice said. "Rooftop access is restricted until further notice. Please use alternate routes as directed by security." The message was smooth, practiced, and just vague enough to belong to any hospital. The kind of announcement people forgot if nothing else happened. The lights trembled again. This time the vibration traveled through the floor, up through the soles of shoes, into the bones. A low sound followed it, not sharp like thunder, more like a distant drum pressed against the sky. It did not crash. It pulsed. Tessa felt her shoulders adjust, not rising, not tightening, just aligning. Her gaze moved to the doors, then to the nearest hallway corner, then to the stairwell access sign. She mapped the department without appearing to. She did it the way other people checked their phones. Sierra noticed her shift. "Is that the storm?" Sierra asked, voice small. Tessa kept her eyes on the board. Could be. Miles looked up from his conversation. Are we losing power? He asked, half joking. A tech shook his head. Generators are quiet. The low sound faded, then returned, then faded again. It carried a pressure with it the way loud music in a car could press against your chest, even from down the street. Cole came back through the corridor now, with 2 additional security officers behind him. They were not running. They were not smiling. They moved like men setting furniture into the correct position. Cole stopped at the station. Kim, I need a clear hallway to the service elevator. No patients, no family, just staff. Kim's eyes did not widen. How long? Cole hesitated just long enough for the truth to show at the edge of his control. Short, he said. Kim turned and raised her voice, just enough to carry not enough to alarm. All staff keep the main corridor clear. Move family to the waiting room. Keep stretchers to the bays. Thank you. Her tone was the tone people obeyed, because she never wasted it. Tessa stepped to the entrance and guided a man with a swollen hand back toward the seating area. She did it with a gentle touch to his elbow and a calm sentence. She kept her body between him and the corridor without making it feel like a wall. Sir, you are safe, she said. We need this space for medical traffic. He opened his mouth to argue, then saw her face and closed it again. He turned and went. The sound outside grew slightly stronger. Not louder exactly, more present. The glass doors vibrated in their tracks. Tessa caught her own reflection in the door for a split second. Wet hair from humidity, tired eyes, badge light catching on laminated plastic. She adjusted the badge so it lay flat and did not swing. Her fingers brushed the cuff of her sleeve at her wrist. The scar stayed covered. Cole's phone buzzed again. He looked at it, then answered with a single word. Cole. A pause. His eyes went up to the ceiling. Copy. Helipad is clear. Stairwell is controlled. Corridor is clear. He ended the call and looked across the station at Tessa. His gaze was professional, not curious. It held the weight of someone who had learned that hospitals were soft targets and sacred places at the same time. Tessa, he said. Yes, she replied. Cole's voice stayed steady. If anyone asks you questions you do not want to answer, you send them to me. Tessa did not blink. Okay. Miles watched the exchange from the chart rack, brow furrowed. He took a step toward the station as if he intended to insert himself. Kim's hand rose without looking, palm out a quiet stop sign. Miles halted, irritation flashing, and then smoothing into a forced neutrality. The department kept moving. A patient in Bay 6 needed nausea meds. A man in the waiting room paced with a broken tooth and a swollen cheek. A child coughed wet into a paper mask. Life did not pause for strange vibrations in the ceiling. Tessa returned to Bay 3 and checked Ray again. His pulse was steadier now. His breathing had found a better rhythm. She adjusted the monitor lead that had loosened. The adhesive smelled faintly of alcohol. Still raining, Ray asked, eyes barely open. Yes, Tessa said. He made a sound that could have been a laugh. Figures. Tessa stepped out and pulled the curtain closed behind her. In the hallway, the low pulsing sound outside softened, then steadied like an engine settling into a consistent tempo. She walked back toward the nurse's station with measured steps, hands empty ready. The fluorescent lights held, the cameras blinked their little red dots. Rain slid down the windows in straight lines that refused to break. The steady pulse outside held for another minute, then softened like a giant hand easing off a drum. The fluorescent lights stopped trembling. Conversations rose a notch, careful but returning. Someone laughed once at the desk and cut it short when a monitor chimed in Bay 6. Tessa reached the nurse's station and set her palms flat on the counter for a second. The laminate was cool. The cameras blinked their tiny red dots in the corners. She looked at the board, checked the times, and moved a name to a new column with the calm efficiency of someone sorting tools. The ambulance radio cracked, then cleared. Rainier Point inbound trauma, the dispatcher said. Male late 20s, shoulder injury with active bleeding, stable airway, stable breathing. Pain is high, ETA 3 minutes. Kim Park's pen stopped. Miles Redding lifted his head, attention snapping into place. Sierra Lane stood straight, her hands already reaching for gloves. Tessa did not rush. She just moved. She opened Bay 2, cleared the clutter, and checked the suction. She tugged the oxygen line to make sure it was seated, then tapped the monitor screen awake. The beep returned steady and patient. In the hallway, Chief Darius Cole spoke to one of his officers in a quiet tone. The officer nodded and stepped toward the waiting room to keep the main corridor open. The doors at the ambulance entrance swung inward and rain came with them. 2 paramedics rolled a stretcher through the threshold, water dripping off the frame. The patient on the stretcher held his arm close to his body, jaw clenched tight enough to sharpen his cheekbones. His shirt had been cut away around the shoulder fabric, hanging in damp strips. Blood had soaked the gauze pad and darkened the edges. Name is Owen Kincaid, a paramedic said. He was moving gear when he slipped. Shoulder took the hit. Possible tear and dislocation. We got bleeding controlled, but it keeps seeping. Vitals are okay. He is not happy. Owen's eyes were bright and hard-fixed on the ceiling, as if it had offended him. A muscle jumped at the corner of his jaw. His skin was pale under the fluorescent light's rain still clinging to his hair. Tessa met them at the bay, one hand on the rail to guide the turn, the other hand reaching for the pulse oximeter. "Owen," she said. "I'm Tessa. Look at me for a second." His eyes shifted to her. The anger in them held, but something else moved underneath it like a tide pulling back from a familiar shore. He stared at her face, not the badge, not the gloves. "Tessa," he repeated, voice rough. "That's me," she said. "You are safe here." She clipped the pulse ox on his finger and watched the number settle. She checked his chest rise, listened to his breathing. Without a stethoscope, then placed 2 fingers at his wrist. "Strong pulse," she said, more for the room than for him. "Let's get you more comfortable." Miles stepped in, brisk and polished. "Owen, I'm Dr. Redding. We're going to take a look at that shoulder. Any head injury, any chest pain." Owen shook his head once and winced at the movement. "No," he said, "just fix this." Tessa slid a blood pressure cuff around his other arm and hit start. The cuff inflated, squeezing. Owen's nostrils flared. "Breathe," Tessa said, soft but firm. "In through your nose, out through your mouth." Owen's eyes flicked to her again. For a split second, his expression loosened, like he had been given a set of rules he trusted. "Fine," he muttered, but he did it. Sierra handed Tessa an IV kit. Tessa tied a tourniquet, found a vein, and slid the catheter in with one smooth motion. Blood flashed. She secured it with tape that lay flat, no wrinkles. "Large bore," she said, and handed the hub to Sierra. "Draw labs. Start warm fluids." Miles watched her hands for a moment. Then he turned to the paramedics. "Any meds given?" "Fentanyl 100, the paramedic said. "Helped some. He is still a bear." Owen gave a humorless breath that might have been a laugh. "I heard that." Tessa peeled back the soaked gauze. The wound sat high on the shoulder, torn at the edge like the body had been pulled hard against something sharp. Blood welled slowly, not spraying, but refusing to stop. She pressed fresh gauze down with steady pressure. "This is gonna hurt for a second," she said. Owen's shoulders tensed. His eyes stayed on her face. "I've had worse." Tessa did not react to the line. She only kept the pressure consistent and watched his skin color his breathing, the subtle way his lips went a shade lighter when pain spiked. "Hold still," she said. "You can swear, just don't move." Owen's mouth twitched. "Yes, ma'am." It came out like habit, clean, automatic. Sierra glanced up, eyebrows lifting, and Kim's eyes narrowed slightly at the word. In the corner of the bay, Miles paused as if he had heard a language he did not know but recognized as important. Tessa checked distal pulse at the wrist of the injured side, then capillary refill in the fingers. Pink returned in under 2 seconds. "Good flow," she said. "No nerve issues." She watched his face. "Can you feel this?" She brushed the pads of his fingers gentle, then asked him to squeeze her hand. His grip was solid, even through the pain. "Feels fine," he said. "Okay," she replied. "We keep it that way." Miles nodded at the monitor. Vitals. Kim read them off. Heart rate 110. Pressure 128/76. Sat 97. Miles turned back to Owen. "We will get imaging. Likely dislocation and soft tissue injury. Pain control, then reduction if needed." Owen's gaze stayed on Tessa, not Miles. "You still doing this?" Owen said quietly. Tessa kept her hands on the dressing pressure steady. "I'm a nurse." Owen's eyes tightened, a faint grin, tugging at one corner of his mouth as if the word amused him. "You were never just that." Tessa's jaw set for a fraction of a second. She adjusted the gauze, added a pressure dressing, and wrapped it snugly. "Focus on your breathing," she said. "In, out." Owen did it again, slower this time. The line on the monitor smoothed. Miles cleared his throat. "Owen, what do you do for work?" Owen's eyes finally shifted away from Tessa and landed on Miles. The look was polite in shape and flat in temperature. "I work for the government," Owen said. Miles blinked. "Okay. Any allergies?" "No." "Any meds?" "No." Tessa hung a bag of warm fluids and adjusted the drip. She checked the IV site, then documented the start time with quick, neat taps on the screen. She avoided looking at the ceiling camera, but she felt it there. Owen watched her chart for a moment. "Port Mason," he said, like he was testing the taste of the town, of all places. Tessa finally met his eyes again. "Steady." "You are bleeding in Bay 2, she said. "That's the place we are in." Owen's breath huffed out. "Fair." Sierra approached with medication drawn up. "Pain meds ordered," she said, voice soft and respectful, as if she had wandered into a room where other rules applied. Tessa took the syringe, checked the label, and looked at Owen. "This will take the edge off. It may make you feel warm." "Warm sounds great," Owen said. She pushed the medication slowly through the IV, watching his face, watching the monitor. His shoulders eased a fraction. The tightness around his eyes softened. "Better?" she asked. Owen blinked, then nodded once. Better. His gaze stayed fixed on her, but now it was less sharp. Something like recognition sat there, heavy and quiet. "You got a new name?" he asked. Tessa's fingers paused on the keyboard. Not long enough to be obvious, just long enough for the room to feel it. "It's the one on my badge," she said. Owen's lips parted like he might say something else. He closed them again. He held her eyes, then looked away first, toward the ceiling. "Okay," he said, and the word carried acceptance more than agreement. Tessa adjusted the head of the bed to ease his breathing and supported the injured arm in a sling, careful not to pull. She checked his fingers again, then secured the limb. Miles stepped closer, studying the wound and the way the dressing held. "Good job," he said, and there was something in his voice that reached for control. Tessa nodded without looking at him. "It will seep. We monitor." Kim came to the doorway and motioned Miles out for a quick consult. Miles followed, glancing back once. His eyes caught the way Owen kept watching Tessa. The look stuck there like a thought he could not swallow. In the hall, Sierra stood beside Tessa and lowered her voice. "Do you know him?" Tessa kept her hands moving, smoothing tape, aligning the edges. "He is my patient." Sierra hesitated. "He called you ma'am like you were in charge." Tessa's expression did not change. "In this room, I am in charge of keeping him stable." Owen spoke without turning his head. "She's good," he said, low and certain. Sierra's cheeks flushed. "I can see that." Tessa checked the monitor, then Owen's face. "Any dizziness?" "No." "Nausea?" "No." "Good," Tessa said. "Stay still." Owen's eyes returned to her. "Different kind of rain," he murmured almost to himself. Tessa's hand tightened on the bed rail, for a brief second, knuckles whitening under the glove. She loosened it just as quickly and reached for a fresh blanket. The blanket was warm from the warmer heat rolling off it. She spread it over Owen's legs and tucked it in around his boots. The gesture looked ordinary. It was not. Owen swallowed, throat working. He stared at the blanket for a moment, then back at her. "You still do that," he said. Tessa's voice stayed even. "You were cold." Owen exhaled slowly, his eyelids lowered, and lifted the medication settling. "Thank you," he said. Tessa did not answer with softness. She answered with routine. "Imaging is on the way," she said. "We will get you through this." Outside Bay 2, the hall stayed clear, the way Cole had asked. The waiting room noise pressed against the glass, but did not spill in. Chief Cole stood near the service elevator, posture, straight eyes occasionally lifting to the ceiling as if listening for a frequency other people could not hear. Back at the station, Miles watched through the bay window. He saw the warm blanket. He saw the way Owen's breathing slowed when Tessa spoke. He saw most of all the look Owen gave her, like he recognized a person behind a name tag. Miles turned his attention away too late. Kim caught him looking and said nothing. Her silence was its own warning. Tessa finished her notes, checked Owen one more time, and stepped out of the bay. The doors slid nearly shut behind her, and the sounds of the department rose to fill the space she left. She pulled off her gloves, washed her hands, and dried them carefully. Her sleeve stayed down, the scar stayed covered. She looked at the board again, then at the corridor, then at the cameras. Everything in the department held its place, but the air felt slightly tighter, as if the building had taken in a breath and decided not to let it go. The air felt tighter, like the department had closed its fist around something no one could name. Tessa Quinn stood at the board with her pen-poised eyes moving between room numbers and times. She looked as if she belonged there the way the monitors belonged there, steady and indifferent to drama. Owen Kincaid lay in Bay 2 under a warm blanket, breathing easier, pain dulled to a manageable edge. The hallway stayed clear, the way Chief Cole wanted. The cameras blinked in their corners, patient as insects. Dr. Miles Redding tried to return to his charting. He typed 2 sentences, deleted one, then retyped it with different words. He told himself it was fatigue, the hour pressing down the stale coffee. He told himself he was annoyed because the night had been busy, and no one thanked him for holding the line. That was not the real reason. He had seen the way Owen looked at Tessa. Not like a patient looking at a nurse, like a man seeing a person who had once stood between him and something worse. He had heard the yes ma'am clean as muscle memory spoken without irony. He had watched Tessa ignore it and keep pressure on a wound like it was the only truth in the room. Miles knew the hospital. He knew its politics, its gossip, its quiet competitions. He had never seen anyone pull the air around them the way she did. She did not demand attention. She did not collect it. It still gathered. He glanced down the hallway. Tessa spoke to a tech at the supply closet, then walked away with a fresh roll of tape. Her shoulders stayed relaxed. Her eyes still did that quick sweep without looking like a sweep. She turned corners like she had already measured the distance. Miles felt an itch under his skin, the kind that did not go away when you ignored it. He found Kim Park by the desk and tried to sound casual. "Where did Tessa transfer from?" Kim did not look up from the board. She did not transfer. She applied. Miles waited for more. It did not come. He shifted. "She ever worked trauma before here?" Kim finally looked at him. Her gaze was flat. "She works trauma here." Miles gave a short laugh that landed wrong. You know what I mean. Kim's pen tapped once against the clipboard. I mean what I said. Miles backed off with a shrug that pretended it was nothing. He walked toward the staff hallway, telling himself he needed to check something in his locker. His steps sounded too loud on the linoleum. The staff corridor was dimmer than the main unit, lit by older bulbs that hummed softly. The smell changed back there. Less antiseptic, more damp fabric, stale microwave dinners, and the faint sweetness of cheap air freshener fighting a losing battle. A mop bucket sat against the wall waterline, stained brown. Somewhere a dryer thumped with slow, tired rhythm. Miles stopped at the locker room door and listened. No voices, only the hum and the distant beeping of the unit muffled like sound underwater. He pushed the door open. Inside, metal lockers lined the walls in rows. A bench ran down the center, scratched with keys and years. A vent in the ceiling pushed lukewarm air that smelled like wet cotton. His own locker was near the corner. Tessa's was 2 rows over, halfway down plain like all the others. He stood still long enough to feel his pulse in his throat. He told himself he had reasons. Patient safety, staff safety. If Owen was some government operator and he recognized her, then maybe there was a history that mattered. Maybe there was a threat. Maybe there was a liability. Those words sounded responsible in his head. The truth was simpler. He wanted to know. He wanted the ground under his feet to stop shifting. Miles reached into his pocket and touched the spare key. He had it because physicians complained when they locked themselves out. Administration liked to keep the department running. Keys were practical. Keys were also temptations. He walked to Tessa's locker and looked at the lock. No sign, no sticker, no name tag. Just metal and a small, round keyhole. He hesitated, then slid the key in and turned it. The click was quiet, but it sounded loud anyway. He pulled the door open. The inside was neat. Not obsessively neat, just intentional. 2 sets of scrubs folded tight. A gray sweatshirt rolled into a smooth cylinder, a pair of clean shoes in a plastic bag, a small toiletry kit, a pack of gum, a protein bar, a black pen clipped to the inside pocket. Nothing dramatic. Miles let out a breath he did not know he was holding and felt foolish for a second. Then he saw the pouch. It was small cloth worn soft at the corners like it had been carried a long time. It was tucked behind the folded scrubs, hidden but not buried. Miles pulled it out with careful fingers. The fabric felt heavier than it should. He opened the drawstring. Inside lay a patch, faded edges frayed. The lettering was still readable. Nightjar restricted. Miles stared at it. The words hit his mind with a cold weight. Restricted meant paperwork. Restricted meant doors that did not open for ordinary people. Restricted meant a part of the world that did not show up in hospital policy manuals. He turned the patch over, plain backing, no clue. He checked the pouch again. A thin strip of paracord coiled tight, a single small carabiner, a tiny roll of medical tape with dust on the edge. Ordinary things, yet the way they were kept made them feel like tools, not leftovers. His phone was in his hand before he admitted it to himself. He snapped a photo. The shutter sound was off, but he felt it anyway, like the device had spoken. The locker room seemed to get quieter. Miles slid the patch back into the pouch and tucked the pouch on the bench. He kept his phone low thumb, already moving. He typed the word nightjar and then added restricted. The search wheel spun. Results came back thin. A few dead forum links, a birding website, a short mention of a call sign in a post that ended in error. He scrolled, heart rate climbing, and tried again with different words. Nightjar medic, nightjar program, nightjar patch. A blank stretch of nothing. He tapped one of the links. The page loaded as a white screen with a warning line at the top. Access blocked. Then another message slid in under it, smaller text colder. Unauthorized access may be monitored. Miles's mouth went dry. He stared at the screen, then at the ceiling vent as if it had eyes. He turned his head and looked at the corner of the locker room. There was a camera outside in the corridor, he knew that. He did not remember if there was one inside. He realized he had never checked. He had never needed to. His fingers tightened on the phone. The plastic creaked faintly. He locked the screen, but his reflection stayed on the black glass, pale and blurred. He shoved the phone into his pocket and stood there with his hand still pressed against the fabric as if he could hold the device still. A sound came from the hallway outside the locker room. Wheels, a cart, the squeak of rubber turning at the corner. Miles swallowed. He looked at the open locker, at the pouch on the bench, at the folded scrubs. He felt suddenly clumsy, like a child caught touching something that did not belong to him. He moved fast, but not sloppy. He placed the patch back in the pouch, tightened the drawstring, and slid it behind the scrubs, exactly where it had been. He paused, then adjusted the scrubs by a fraction to cover the pouch's edge. He pushed the sweatshirt roll back into its place. He checked the shoes in the plastic bag, then stopped himself. That was too much. That was not his. He closed the locker door gently. He turned the key slowly. The click sounded like relief. His palm stayed on the metal for a moment flat, as if he could erase heat and fingerprints in guilt. He rubbed the side of his thumb along the edge of the door where it met the frame. Then he stepped back, breathing shallow. The cartwheels squeaked again, closer now. Miles walked to the sink and turned on the water. It came out cold at first, then warmed. He washed his hands too long, fingers scrubbing at nothing. Soap smell rose sharp. He rinsed, then rinsed again, and shut the faucet off with his wrist. He dried his hands on a paper towel, then folded the towel once and once more crisp. He did not know why he folded it. His hands did it on their own. He set it on the counter and stared at it like it might explain something. The door opened, and a janitor pushed a cleaning cart in eyes on the floor, earbuds in. The man nodded at Miles without interest and rolled past him. The mop head dragged a wet line behind it. Miles forced a smile that was not returned. He left the locker room and walked back toward the department steps, measured now quieter. In the corridor, the unit noises grew louder again. Monitor beeps voices, the soft thump of a supply bin closing. He passed the stairwell door that led to the roof. A sign had been taped up in plain font. Roof access restricted. Miles stared at the word restricted and felt his stomach drop. The phone in his pocket seemed to weigh more than it should. At the nurse's station, Tessa stood with Sierra explaining something with her hands, simple and practical. Sierra nodded grateful. Tessa's face did not change when Miles approached, but her eyes flicked to him. Not suspicious, just aware like she was taking his measure without making him feel examined. Miles opened his mouth, then closed it. His tongue felt thick. He wanted to ask a question. He wanted to act like he belonged in the answer. Instead, he watched her move a label onto a chart and press it down flat with 2 fingers. Perfect alignment. No wasted motion? Tessa, he said, and his voice came out softer than he intended. She looked up. Doctor. He felt the title hit him polite and distant. He heard it the way Owen had said ma'am, and the comparison stung. Miles nodded toward Bay 2. How is he? Stable, Tessa said. Pain is under control. Bleeding is controlled for now. For now, Miles repeated automatic. Tessa met his eyes for a beat. We watched the dressing. We watched circulation. We do not guess. Miles nodded again. He wanted to say something about the patch about Nightjar, about what he had found. The words stayed trapped behind his teeth. He took a step back. Okay, good. Tessa turned back to the chart without ceremony. Miles stood there for one more second, then walked away feeling the shame like a heat under his collar. The department kept moving around him indifferent. He returned to his workstation and pulled up another chart. The letters on the screen blurred for a moment. He blinked until they came into focus. From across the station, he saw Tessa glance up at the ceiling camera and then down again, the motion so quick it could have been nothing. He could not make himself look away. Miles kept typing. His hands were steady. His thoughts were not. Miles Redding stared at the chart on his screen and watched the cursor blink as if it were waiting for him to admit something. His phone sat heavy in his pocket. The photo he had taken felt like a live wire pressed against his thigh. Across the nurse's station, Tessa Quinn moved through tasks the way a tide moved, quiet, unstoppable, never hurrying but never late. She checked a medication drawer, resealed a sterile pack, and handed Sierra Lane a fresh roll of tape without being asked. Her voice stayed low, her hands stayed sure. Owen Kincaid's monitor in Bay 2 kept a steady song, the pressure dressing held. His pain had settled into a duller edge. When Tessa stepped into the bay to check his fingers again, he watched her with a stillness that looked like respect. When she stepped back out, he closed his eyes and let the blanket's warmth do its work. Chief Darius Cole remained near the service elevator, shoulders squared, gaze lifting now and then toward the ceiling, as if he could hear something inside the building's bones. One of his officers stood at the waiting room threshold, guiding family members away from the main corridor with polite hands and short sentences. The department kept moving. It always did. Then the lights trembled again. It was not a flicker, not a power dip. It was a vibration that ran through the ceiling panels and into the fixtures, a fine shiver that made the fluorescents hum a little louder. A couple of people looked up, then back down, unsure of what to do with the sensation that had no clear source. A low pulse followed deeper than thunder, too steady to be wind. The glass doors at the ambulance entrance quivered in their tracks. Kim Park lifted her chin, listening. Sierra's eyes widened. Is that the storm? Tessa did not answer right away. She set a stack of labels down and placed her palm on the counter. She felt the vibration through the laminate. Her expression did not change, but her attention sharpened. Miles rose from his chair, half irritated, half uneasy. If we lose power, he said, trying for humor, I'm not doing reductions by flashlight. No one laughed. The pulse grew more present, not louder exactly, closer. Cole's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and answered with one word. Cole. His voice was calm. It stayed calm through a short exchange that no one else could hear. Copy, he said. Helipad clear, stairwell controlled, corridor clear, understood. He ended the call and walked toward the nurse's station. His steps were measured. He stopped at Kim's side and spoke low enough that only she and Tessa could hear. They are on final, he said. Kim's eyes held on his face. Who is they? Cole did not look away. Navy, he replied. 3 aircraft. Miles heard the word and stepped closer. Curiosity pulling him like a hook. Navy, here. Kim raised a hand without turning her head, palm out. Miles stopped again, heat rising in his cheeks. Tessa's gaze stayed on Cole. Any impact to patients, she asked. No, Cole said. We keep flow clean. Nobody goes toward the stairwell. Nobody goes toward the roof. Not curious staff, not family. Tessa nodded once, as if he had just given a medication order. Understood. The pulse outside swelled, then deepened into a layered sound, rotors beating air into the night. It pressed against the building, like a hand against a door. Somewhere above them, a deeper thump joined the rhythm, then another offset by a fraction, creating a pattern that made the ceiling feel too thin. A tech near the medication room whispered, "That is not life flight." A paramedic by the ambulance entrance stared up at the ceiling as if he could see through it. 3 birds, he murmured. What is going on? Cole's officer guided 2 teenagers with a sprained ankle away from the corridor. The boys looked annoyed at being redirected until they heard the sound above them. Then they went quiet, eyes round. The overhead speaker clicked on with a soft pop. Attention staff, a calm voice said. Please remain in your assigned areas. Rooftop access remains restricted. Thank you for your cooperation. It was the kind of message designed to sound normal. It did not. Tessa moved to the bay doors and checked on a patient who had started coughing hard, the kind of cough that came from deep in the chest. She adjusted the oxygen, raised the head of the bed, and spoke to the patient in a voice that held steady. In through your nose, she said. Out slow. The patient nodded and followed her lead. The coughing eased. In the hallway, Miles stood rigid with the feeling that the world was rearranging itself around one person, and he had been too blind to see it. His hand drifted to his pocket. His fingers brushed his phone. The word restricted flashed in his mind like a warning light. He watched Tessa return to the station and update the board as if nothing above them mattered. He realized her calm was not denial. It was control. The building shook more noticeably now, not violent, but enough to rattle a cup of pens on the counter. Kim steadied the cup with her hand. Cole spoke into his radio. Keep the elevator clear. Keep the stairwell clear. No one crosses the service corridor. One of the security officers nodded and moved off. The waiting room noise dimmed people sensing without being told that this was not a moment for complaints. Even the televisions mounted on the wall seemed too loud, and someone turned one down. A minute later, the sound shifted. The pressure lifted slightly as if the rotors had found the roof and settled. The vibration changed from approach to presence. A faint smell seeped into the ventilation, sharp and metallic like fuel and wet steel. It did not belong in a hospital. It belonged on a flight line. Tessa's eyes flicked toward the service corridor door. Her expression remained neutral, her shoulders aligned. Cole returned now with a different posture, ready to host something that did not fit neatly into policy. They are coming down through the service elevator, he said to Kim. They will stay out of patient areas unless we clear them through. They asked for one person. Kim's voice stayed even. Who? Cole's eyes landed on Tessa. Her. Silence held for a beat. Not fear, not awe, just the kind of pause people took when they realized the room had a center they had not named before. Miles felt his stomach drop. He looked at Tessa's face, expecting surprise. He saw none. Tessa met Cole's gaze. Do we have a safe corridor? She asked. Yes, Cole said. Good, Tessa replied. She turned and checked a monitor display, as if she were confirming a heart rate. She looked back. Keep it that way. Cole gave a small nod, respect settling in the space between them. The service corridor door opened. 2 men stepped out first, not in hospital scrubs, not in police uniforms. Dark jackets, no visible insignia. Their hair was clipped short. Their eyes moved fast, scanning, then settling. Behind them came a 3rd man, with rain on his shoulders and a calm that did not need volume. He carried himself like someone who knew exactly where his feet were. He stopped at the threshold of the nurse's station and waited for Cole to approach as if he understood that hospitals had their own chain of command. Cole stepped forward. I'm Darius Cole, security chief. You are in a medical facility. The man nodded. Commander Marcus Hale, United States Navy. His voice was steady. It did not reach for authority. It simply stated a fact. Cole held out a hand. Credentials. Hale produced a wallet, opened it, and held it at an angle that allowed Cole to read without stepping into Hale's space. Cole checked it, eyes narrowing slightly, then relaxing. He handed it back. Thank you, Cole said. Hale's gaze moved past Cole and found Kim Park, charge nurse. Kim stepped forward. Kim Park. Hale gave a small nod. We will not disrupt your operations. We will follow your access rules. Kim did not soften, but she respected the sentence. Then follow them, she said. Hale turned his attention to Tessa. For a moment, the department's noise seemed to pull back. The monitors kept beeping. A phone rang at the front desk and was answered quickly. A child coughed in the waiting room. Still, the air around the station held tight. Hale spoke as if he were speaking to one person in a crowded room. Tessa Quinn. Tessa's posture did not change. Yes. I'm here to speak with you, Hale said. Privately, if possible. Miles took a step forward without thinking. What is this about? He asked, voice sharper than he intended. This is a hospital. Kim's hand lifted again, a quiet stop, but Miles was already in it. Hale looked at Miles. The look was polite and flat, not angry, not dismissive, simply calibrated. Doctor, he asked. Miles hesitated. Dr. Redding. Hale nodded once and shifted his gaze back to Tessa. We are not here to take her, he said. We are here to request her. Cole watched Hale's face carefully. Request for what purpose, he asked. Hale's answer was brief. Medical support, he said. Time sensitive. Kim's jaw tightened. We have patients. We have staffing. You do not remove my nurse without a plan. Hale did not argue. Understood, he said. We can brief within your rules. We can do it here at the station with security present. No patient flow disruption. Tessa looked at Kim, then at the board, then at Bay 2's glass where Owen lay behind it, eyes closed, but not asleep. She returned her gaze to Hale. Say what you need to say, she said. Hale's eyes held on her for a beat. There was something in that look that recognized more than a name badge. It recognized a capability. He placed a rugged tablet case on the counter with care, like setting down a loaded instrument. The case was wet from rain. The screen was dark. We need your medical authority, Hale said. The words landed quietly, but they changed the air. Miles felt his throat tighten. His phone pressed against his leg like a stone. He could not tell if Tessa had noticed his theft of privacy, his photo, his fear. He only knew that Hale's presence made his own actions feel small and dangerous. Tessa rested her fingertips on the edge of the tablet case. She did not open it. She did not flinch. Chief Cole stays, she said. Hale nodded. Of course. Kim remained at Tessa's side, grounded and sharp. If this affects my unit, she said, I will know. Hale looked at Kim with the same calm he gave Cole. Yes, he replied. Tessa lifted her eyes to the ceiling camera for a fraction of a second, then back down to the case. Her voice stayed level. Turn it on, she said. The tablet case sat on the counter with rain beating on its corners. Tessa kept her fingertips resting on the edge, light contact as if she were checking for heat. Commander Marcus Hale waited without filling the silence. Chief Darius Cole stood close enough to see the screen. Kim Park stayed at Tessa's shoulder, steady as a wall. Miles Redding hovered behind them, a step too far to belong, and a step too close to pretend he did not care. His pulse thudded in his ears. The word restricted moved through his mind like a bruise you kept pressing. Tessa did not look at Miles. Turn it on, she said again, calm. Hale flipped open the case. The tablet woke with a dim glow, then sharpened into a feed. For a second, it was only darkness and sound. Harsh breathing. A low voice counting. A faint metallic clink like tools being set down too carefully. Then the image stabilized. A room cramped and dirty, lit by a single headlamp beam that swept across faces and hands, blood on sleeves, gauze packed into a wound. Someone in the background groaned and tried to swallow it back. The camera angle shifted and caught a man leaning close to the lens. He had dirt streaked across his cheek and a cut at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were focused, the way eyes got when they had been awake too long. Command, he said. We have multiple casualties. No evac. We need medical. His voice broke on the last word, not from fear, from effort. Hale kept his own voice low. This link is secure. You will hear a nurse speaking. You will follow her directions. Understood? The man on screen nodded once hard. Understood. Tessa watched without blinking. She tracked details like a chart in motion. Color of skin, rate of breathing, the shine of sweat, a hand that trembled when it tried to apply pressure. How many, she asked. 6, Hale said. All intelligence personnel attached to a team. They are pinned inside a hostile structure, multiple traumatic injuries, significant bleeding, no window for extraction. Kim's jaw tightened. You are asking for remote triage from my nurse's station? Haley looked at her. We are asking for medical command, he said. Not advice, not suggestions, command. Kim's eyes flicked to Tessa, then back to Hale. Why her? Hale's gaze returned to Tessa. Because she has done it before. Miles let out a short breath, almost a sound, then caught himself. He had seen the patch. He had seen the warning on his phone. Now the rest of the world was standing around that same truth and calling it by a different name. Tessa angled the tablet slightly so Cole and Kim could see without crowding her. "Who is on the other end with hands?" she asked. The man on screen shifted. "I am," he said. "Name is Grant." "Grant," Tessa replied. "Put the camera on the most quiet patient." Grant hesitated. The headlamp beam swung. The camera moved, jostling, then landed on a person lying on the floor, face turned to the side. Their lips were pale. Their chest rose shallow fast, like they were sipping air. Tessa leaned closer, eyes narrowing in concentration. The monitors in the ER continued their gentle beeping behind her. But her attention had tightened to the grainy image and the rhythm of breath coming through the speakers. "Grant," she said, "is that patient conscious?" "No," he answered, not responding. "Check for a pulse at the neck," Tessa said. "Tell me if it is strong or weak." Grant's hand came into frame, fingers pressing. He swallowed. "Weak," he said. "Fast." "Okay," Tessa replied. "Does the chest rise evenly? Any gurgling sounds?" Grant leaned close. The mic caught wet breath for a second. No gurgle. Breathing fast, not deep. Tessa nodded once. "You keep that airway open. Chin up, head to the side if you can. If vomiting happens, roll them. Do not let them lie flat on their back." Kim watched Tessa's face. "This is real," Kim said, more statement than question. "Yes," Hale answered. Cole's radio crackled once. He ignored it. Tessa did not give a speech. She gave structure. "Show me the bleeding," she said. Grant moved the camera. The beam flashed over a thigh with a dark, soaked wrap over a hand clamped to a lower abdomen, over a forearm with blood running down to the wrist and dripping to the floor. Tessa's voice stayed level. "Grant, I need you to tell me who's bleeding the most right now, the one you cannot keep up with." Grant's breathing hitched. The camera swung to the thigh. "This one," he said. "It keeps soaking through." "Do you have a tourniquet?" Tessa asked. Grant reached off screen and came back with one. "Yes." "Place it high on the leg," Tessa said. "As high as you can. Tighten until bleeding stops." "Not until it feels tight. Until bleeding stops." Grant's hands moved. His fingers shook, then steadied. The strap went around. He twisted the windlass. The patient's leg jerked. "Keep going," Tessa said. "Count your turns out loud." "1," Grant said. 2, 3. The blood slowed, then stopped. "Lock it," Tessa said. "Write the time on something and keep it visible." Grant tore a strip of tape and wrote with a marker that left thick lines. He stuck it to the strap. Time marked. Tessa's eyes flicked to the rest of the room on screen. "Now pack what you can pack," she said. "If there is a wound you can see, put pressure and pack to the source. Keep pressure. Do not peek." Hale watched her hands. He had not moved closer, but his attention was absolute. "You were trained under Nightjar," he said, quiet enough that only those at the station heard. Tessa did not react to the name with anger or pride. "Do not use that in this building," she said. Haley nodded once. "Understood." Miles felt his stomach turn. He wanted to disappear into the wall, and also to hear every word. Kim kept her voice controlled. "Commander, you are in a civilian hospital. You cannot pull my staff into something that puts patients here at risk." Hale's face remained calm. "We will not move through patient care space," he said. "We will not block intake. We will not ask your staff to do anything beyond what one nurse can do at a counter. We came in through service access. We leave the same way." Cole's eyes stayed on Hale. "And if the media shows up?" Hale did not flinch. "They will be handled outside your doors," he said. "No one in this room speaks to them." Kim's gaze tightened. "That part is already policy." Hale inclined his head, acknowledging. "Good." Tessa kept her eyes on the tablet. Grant had moved the camera back to the unconscious patient and was holding the jaw forward. The patient's breathing looked slightly less frantic. Not better, less bad. Tessa spoke again, steady. "Grant, tell me what you have for warmth." Grant swallowed. "Blankets, jackets, emergency foil." "Use it," Tessa said. "Wrap them, keep them dry, insulate from the floor. Hypothermia kills even when bleeding stops." The words were plain. The sentence carried weight anyway. Hale reached into a dark bag at his side and placed it on the counter near the tablet. It was compact, scuffed, built for being thrown into corners. A medical jump bag. The zipper tabs were thick enough for gloved hands. Kim's eyes flicked to it. "No," she said, immediate. Tessa looked at Kim, then back at Hale. "Why is that here?" she asked. Hale answered without dramatics. "Because we need you to work from a stable comms platform," he said. "And we need you close enough to keep the line clean. The roof is clear. The aircraft are ready." Miles's chest tightened. Aircraft, roof, the vibrations, the fuel smell, it all locked into place. Tessa's face remained calm, but something in her posture set. Not alarm, decision. She lifted her eyes from the screen and met Hale's. "You want me off the floor," she said. Hale did not deny it. "Yes," he replied. "We will not force you. We are requesting. We are asking you to take medical command for prolonged care. Those 6 people do not have time for anyone else to learn this on the fly." Kim's fingers curled around the edge of the counter. We are short-staffed, she said. Tessa turned to Kim, her voice softened by a degree not less firm. You have Sierra, she said. You have the team. They know the unit. They can hold it. Kim's eyes searched Tessa's face. You are tired, Kim said. You have been on your feet all night. Tessa's mouth tightened for a moment. So are they, she said and nodded toward the screen. Miles could not stop himself. Tessa, he said, voice rough. You do not have to do this. Tessa looked at him for the first time since Hale arrived. Her gaze was steady. It did not forgive. It did not accuse. It simply saw. Miles's throat tightened. The photo in his pocket felt like a confession. Hale spoke measured. Doctor, with respect, this is her decision. Kim's eyes cut to Miles. With respect, she echoed, stay in your lane. Miles fell silent. Tessa turned back to Hale. My terms, she said. Hale nodded. Say them. Tessa spoke like she was placing lines on a chart. I hold sole medical authority for this link, she said. You hold tactical decisions. I do not give orders about movement. You do not give orders about medicine. Hale answered immediately. Agreed. Tessa continued. No deviation from my protocol when it affects survival. No shortcuts because someone wants speed. If I say, stop bleeding, you stop bleeding. If I say, move the camera, you move the camera. Hale's expression did not change. Copy. Tessa's eyes moved to Cole. Corridor remains clear, she said. Cole nodded. Already done. Tessa looked at Kim. Patient flow stays protected, she said. Kim's jaw tightened, then she nodded once. Yes. Tessa returned her attention to the tablet. Grant, she said, I am your medical lead. You will do what I say, and you will tell me the truth even when it is ugly. Do you understand me? Grant's head bobbed. Yes, ma'am. The words landed in the nurse's station and changed the room. Sierra, standing a few feet away, froze with a roll of tape in her hands. A tech at the far counter stopped mid-sentence. Even the phones seemed quieter for a beat. Hale lifted his hand slightly. Two of the men who had come down with him stepped into view. They stood straight, feet set. Civilian clothing, no insignia. Discipline without display. They did not salute. They did not speak to anyone else. They spoke as one, low and clear. Yes, ma'am. Miles felt it in his chest like the first beat of a song you could not ignore. Not theater. Not intimidation. Something else. A recognition of who held the plan together when blood and time fought back. Tessa did not look at them. She looked at the tablet. Grant. She said, check the tourniquet again. Confirm bleeding is stopped. Tell me the patient's color. Grant moved, voice steadier now that he had instructions. Bleeding stopped. Skin is pale. Pulse still fast. Keep them warm, Tessa said. Do not loosen it. Do not move it. Keep pressure on any other bleeding you see. Hale slid the jump bag closer without pushing it into her space. Tessa set her hand on its handle for a moment, feeling the rough webbing under her palm. The vibration of the building had eased since the rotor settled, but the air still tasted faintly of fuel through the vents. Kim leaned in, voice tight. If you go, she said. Tessa looked at her. Keep Beitu watched, she replied. Do not let Owen pull his dressing off. He will try when he thinks nobody is looking. Kim gave a short, unwilling breath that might have been a laugh. I can handle a stubborn sailor. Tessa nodded. She lifted the tablet, slightly adjusting the angle so the camera feed stayed stable as she moved it off the counter. Cole. She said service corridor. Cole stepped forward, ready. Tessa did not make a show of it. She picked up the jump bag with one hand, the tablet in the other. The weight looked familiar on her shoulders. She glanced once toward Bay 3, where Ray Dobbins slept under a blanket that rose and fell with his breathing. Then she looked toward Bay 2's window, where Owen lay still, eyes closed as if listening. Tessa turned back to the station and spoke to Kim without raising her voice. Keep the unit steady, she said. Kim's eyes held on her. Always, she answered. Tessa stepped into the cleared corridor with Cole guiding the space ahead of her. The hospital sounds continued behind them, monitors beeping, voices calling for blankets, a phone ringing once then answered. In her hands, the tablet carried the harsh breath of a room far away, and she matched it with a voice that stayed calm, counting time in plain words. Chief Darius Cole walked a half step ahead, clearing space with posture and a quiet hand. The service corridor smelled like concrete, hot metal, and rain-soaked insulation. Under it all was a sharp bite of fuel that did not belong in a hospital. Tessa Quinn held the tablet close, keeping the microphone away from open doors and echoes. Grant's face filled the screen in uneven headlamp light. He kept glancing off camera, then back down, hands returning to pressure points and straps.
Grant. Tessa said.
Two talking, he answered. One drifting. 3 down. The quiet one is still breathing. Keep someone on the quiet one at all times, Tessa replied. If the breathing changes, you tell me first. Yes, ma'am. Cole swiped a keycard at the service elevator. The lock clicked. The doors opened to an empty car that hummed softly. Hale and two men in dark jackets followed without crowding her. Their eyes moved in short practice sweeps, then settled. Inside the elevator, the fluorescent light buzzed and the handrail vibrated faintly under Tessa's palm. The rotors above the building were close enough now to be felt more than heard, a steady pulse rising through steel. Grant's voice crackled. The leg strap is holding. Bleeding stopped. The abdominal one keeps oozing. Hold pressure and keep them warm, Tessa said. Tell me if it turns into a steady flow. The elevator rose. Numbers climbed. The pulse in the walls stayed constant like a second heart. The doors opened to a roof landing and cold air rushed in. Cole pushed the roof door wide. Sound hit them all at once, a heavy thrum that pressed rain into sharp mist. 3 helicopters sat on the pad, dark bodies slick with water rotors carving the night. Running lights blinked through the wet air. A crew member signaled them forward with gloved hands. Tessa leaned into the wind knees, bent tablet hugged to her chest. The jump bag strap cut across her shoulder. She kept her head down and walked by feel, one step, then another, letting the rotor wash shove at her without taking her balance. They reached the nearest aircraft. A crew member pulled the door open, and warm air spilled out, smelling of electronics and fuel. Tessa climbed in and found the ridged floor with her boots. The noise was still loud, but contained a thick vibration that lived in the bones. Hale climbed in behind her and shut the door. He handed her a headset. Tessa fitted it over her ears, and the world narrowed. The roar dulled. Grant's breathing came through clear, close human. Tessa Grant said, relief in the sound, I can hear you. Good, she replied. Keep the camera steady. Show me hands and faces. The feed settled on the room again. Tessa took in the scene in one glance. Blood on the floor smeared tracks where boots had slid. One person slumped against a wall. Another crouched with both hands buried in gauze. The quiet patient lay on their side chest, rising fast, shallow. Tell me who feels cold, Tessa said. Grant panned to the quiet one. This one. Skin is clammy. Wrap them, Tessa said. Insulate from the floor. Keep the head turned. Watch for vomit. A jacket slid under the patient. Foil crinkled as someone unfolded it. The headlamp beam shook, then steadied as Grant forced his own hands to calm. Now the one drifting, Tessa said. The camera shifted to the person against the wall. Eyes half open, lips pale. A hand pressed gauze to a hip wound, the edges darkening. He keeps saying he is fine, Grant muttered. Ask him his name, Tessa said. Ask him what day it is. Grant leaned in. Name. A whisper. Eli. What day is it, Eli? Eli blinked slowly. Friday, he said, then his chin dipped. Grant's voice tightened. He is going out. Tessa kept her tone level. Hold his jaw forward, keep him upright, keep pressure on the wound. Talk to him like he can still hear you. Grant obeyed. Eli, stay with me. Look at the light. Stay with me. In the cabin, Tessa felt the aircraft shift as it lifted and settled into a steadier hover. Rain ticked against the fuselage. The rotor rhythm stayed constant, a metronome that made her own breathing fall into time. Hale watched the screen without speaking. He spoke briefly into his own mic, words kept away from her channel. Then he looked at Tessa. We can hold as long as needed, he said. Tessa did not look up. Then we keep them alive, she replied. Grant's face flashed on screen again. We are low on gauze. Use clean cloth, Tessa said. Pressure matters. Save sterile for the deepest wounds. Copy. She checked the clock on the tablet, spoke the time once, then again, making it stick. Grant repeated it back. The repetition steadied them both, like counting compressions in a quiet bay. Tessa listened. She watched hands. She tracked skin color and breath patterns, the way a voice changed when someone started to slip. She kept her questions short and her directions simpler than fear wanted them to be. On the roof above Port Mason, the rotors kept their steady beat. On the tablet, 6 lives clung to that beat and to the calm voice that refused to hurry. Rain ticked against the helicopter skin like thrown grit. In Tessa Quinn's headset, Grant's voice had steadied. The headlamp beam no longer whipped across the room. It moved with intention, lingering on hands and faces, on a tourniquet strap that stayed locked on gauze, that stayed pressed. When someone shivered, a jacket was pulled tighter. Tessa kept her sentences short and her questions sharp. She listened between words for the sounds that mattered. Color is improving, Grant said. Pulse is still fast, but it is not fading. Keep them insulated, Tessa replied. Do not let anyone lie flat. Talk to the quiet one every minute. If the breathing changes, you tell me first. Yes, ma'am. Grant leaned close to the camera dirt, streaked on his cheek, eyes red from strain. We can hold, he said. Tessa did not answer with comfort. She answered with structure. Confirm the tourniquet time again, she said. Grant repeated it. Another voice echoed it. Tessa nodded once and kept them moving through minutes that scraped slow. When the aircraft settled back onto the roof, the vibration shifted from flight to presence. Cold air rushed in as the door opened. Tessa descended through the service corridor with the tablet hugged close, Hale and Chief Darius Cole keeping the path clear without turning it into a show. The emergency department noise met her at the threshold. Phones beeps, wet boots, a baby wailing in triage, the clean bite of antiseptic. At the nurse's station, Kim Park stepped in beside her, eyes locked on Tessa's face. Tessa set the tablet down and removed the headset. "They are stable for now," she said. Kim exhaled once. "That is enough." Hale stopped at the boundary Cole held. Rain still glistened on his jacket. "Thank you," he said quiet. Tessa gave a small nod. "Keep our corridors clear," she replied. The men with Hale faded back through the service corridor as if they had never been there. The fuel smell thinned in the vents. Owen Kincaid opened his eyes in Bay 2 when Tessa passed the glass and gave a single small nod. In Bay 3, Ray Dobbins stirred under his blanket and blinked at the ceiling. Tessa checked his pulse ox, adjusted his cannula, then moved on. Dawn came gray and wet. The switchboard began to light up, one call after another. Reporters asked for statements. Offices asked for names. Administration answered with a rule that traveled fast through email. One spokesperson, no staff interviews. Cole coordinated with local police at the entrance and kept the ambulance lane open. Inside, Kim kept the unit moving and kept voices low. That afternoon, the department crowded into a conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and damp wool. Chairs scraped, people kept their hands on their cups and did not drink. Security replayed footage from the service corridor. The screen showed men in civilian clothes, standing straight, answering together. "Yes, ma'am." No salutes, no raised voices. Sierra Lane sat forward, hands clasped. Kim watched without flinching. Miles Redding sat in the back row, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the screen. Work returned to its rhythm, but the tone had changed. People moved out of each other's way without being asked. In spare minutes, staff practiced tight wraps, firm pressure, and keeping warmth where it belonged. A cart that used to sit half-stocked was suddenly full. The hallways stayed clear. The voices stayed softer. 3 days later, Tessa walked in through the staff entrance in clean scrubs, hair damp at the ends, eyes tired but calm. Conversations softened as she passed. A few people stood without thinking, a quiet line that opened space without making a sound. Monitors hummed behind them, steady as rain on glass. They sat back down as she reached the station, letting her move without fanfare. Tessa heard the faint drip of water from boots near triage again. She checked the board, greeted Kim with a nod, and headed toward the bays. Miles waited near the medication room, hands held close to his sides. "Tessa," he said. She stopped face neutral. "I was wrong," he said. "I judged you. I took credit for what you saw. I went into your locker." A monitor beeped down the hall, steady and indifferent. Tessa held his gaze for a long second. "Protect the vulnerable first," she said. "Do not let your pride set the temperature in a room like this." Miles swallowed. Yes, he managed and stepped aside. Late that afternoon, a single sedan eased to the curb in the drizzle. Hale walked into reception alone and left a sealed manila envelope with Tessa's name written in careful block letters. He did not cross into the emergency department. Kim brought it to Tessa near the window by the staff hallway. Inside were 6 small notes, each folded tight. The handwriting varied from shaky to precise. Tessa read them one by one. On the 4th, her vision blurred. A tear slipped down her cheek, warm against cool skin. She folded the notes back into the envelope and tucked it into her scrub pocket like something fragile. A call light blinked. A gurney rolled past. A patient asked for water. Tessa turned toward the bay's shoulders, settling into their familiar alignment. Under her breath, so softly it blended with the hum of the unit, she said, "I choose healing. Every day." Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.